When you think of the LGBTQ plus community, you think of the pride flag, you think of rainbows. However, before the pride flag, there was what's called a pink triangle, and that has a much darker history. It actually started in Nazi Germany, and when you think of symbols in Nazi Germany, you think of the star that Jewish people used to wear. However, there wasn't just the star. Homosexuals actually had a pink triangle. There's an old German law called paragraph 175, which prosecutes homosexual men, and this was actually introduced in 1871, but it really strengthened when Hitler came into power in 1933. Now, we all know Adolf Hitler hated most people, and he definitely hated homosexuals. However, a little bit of a contradiction, he had a friend and an ally called Ernst Röhm, and Ernst was a gay man, openly gay, and Hitler didn't seem to care. Hitler only seemed to care when it became of threat to him, and he accused him of all sorts. So Hitler actually sent his team to shoot him and kill him, so he eventually did die. However, he never had to wear a pink triangle, unlike a lot of homosexuals back then. Between 1933 and 1945, around 100,000 homosexual men were arrested, around 50,000 of them were charged, and historians estimate around 5,000 to 15,000 were sent to concentration camps. Of course, in the concentration camps, the prisoners were forced to wear badges to show who they were. Obviously, Jewish people wore the yellow stars, Jehovah's Witness actually wore a purple triangle, politicians wore red squares, and homosexuals wore an upside-down pink triangle. The gay men were often isolated from the other prisoners, and of course were subject to rounds and rounds of horrific torture and forced labour. They actually had some of the lowest survival rates in the concentration camps. But what happened after the war is just as shocking, because paragraph 175 was never outlawed. It remained in law in Germany for quite a while after the war, so a lot of these men, when they left the concentration camps, they were expecting freedom. However, they were just put back in prison, literally transferred from a concentration camp directly to another prison. It actually wasn't until 1994 that paragraph 175 was completely abolished, and many of those convicted were actually pardoned. So the pink triangle has a lot of really deep and dark history, and during the 70s and 80s, a lot of the LGBTQ plus community reclaimed that triangle. They transformed that symbol into a power of resistance and remembrance. It's a reminder that one of the community's earliest symbols and earliest identifiers is now been reclaimed and is used as a sign of resilience. LGBTQ plus people have always existed and will always exist, and our rights are just as important as everyone else's. So whilst Pride Month has unfortunately come to a close, I personally think Pride should be a year-round thing, and it's important to remember those who lost their lives because of who they were.